I'm Lori Clairhout at laurieclairhout.com, and I am overjoyed today to be talking with Amy Oscar from amyoscar.com. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. So I'm more than overjoyed. I'm just delighted to be here.
We're in a little
Thank you
joy
for
fest. Uh, and from the joy, I have to ask, what is a whim to you?
well, a whim is the invitation of some experience or a little call from the world that draws me forward in a way that I can't resist. And then I jump in. And I've been following a lot of whims lately.
Oh, really? Can you tell me about one? Can you tell me about maybe a recent one?
Sure, I can. But I wanted to say also that I wouldn't have known they were whims and that I was following whims if we hadn't met in the summer and
Oh,
talked about this. I would have called it something else, but it's absolutely whim following. So I would say the latest few are certainly the renovation of my entire home. When my daughter came home from Brooklyn and said, "Mommy, I've always wanted to." Yeah, so I said yes, and it's funny because I'm up to my eyeballs in construction right now, and it's sort of every day's a whim. You know, how will we handle making breakfast with construction people in the kitchen? But anyway, so that was the whim that followed the whim that followed the whim, and I think that I would say that what actually has been happening for me is that um, I had a whim building up inside of my heart for several years. It was time for me to quit my job, and I knew it was time about a year before I left the job for me to go. But I kept sort of mentioning it to my editor, but not quite making it firm, you know. And in December, it'll be a year this December. I made it official. I left that job, and the very next day, I went to yoga. And wait, let me say, and I made it official, which was a whim because it just happened that day. I couldn't not do it anymore, and it was the end of the year, and all this buildup had happened in my life to push me over that edge. And the very next day, after quitting my job, I walked into yoga, and I saw a sign for the yoga teacher training, which I had been seeing. It had been up for months, and I thought, oh, I really want to do that, but yeah, no, no. And I had mentioned to my teacher that I was going to do it, or that I was thinking about doing it. So she approached me that day. She happened to approach me and said, "So what do you think?" And I at first I told her no, and as I walked away from her, I felt this. I'll show you my heart. This pulling in my heart back toward her. And I turned around, and all of a sudden, she had turned her back and was in the other studio already. All of a sudden, I saw this vision of myself saying yes and handing them my debit card and becoming a yoga teacher, all in one like big, like holographic download. I saw the whole thing like a film unfold. And so I thought, well, I could still say no, right? I still had a choice, but I was being shown something. And that doesn't happen. It happens to me more often than maybe other people, but it doesn't happen all the time. Right? And I know these are powerful choice points. And I also knew that I could follow this whim and say yes, and it would lead to a good outcome. And I knew that if I said no, I would probably, this all came in the download, which was interesting. I would probably be in yoga class for the next 6 months while all the other teachers were being trained, regretting that I had said no. I saw all that and I felt all that. So I said yes. So that was the second big whim. And then I graduated, and 6 months later, and now I'm a yoga teacher. And 3 days ago, this is the sort of new, fresh, special whim that I'll share with you. I signed the lease on an office just for me, just for writing, just for doing my one-on-one
Oh,
counseling.
wow.
And as I signed the lease, and the reason I'm telling this story, because these whims are supported. That's my experience. So, and what makes it a whim, not a fancy, not a fantasy, is that it feels supported by spirit. It feels like pregnant with possibility. Does that make sense for you?
It does.
Yeah, yeah. And so I signed this lease for this space, which was absolutely perfect in the most beautiful spot. But of course, you never know, so I wasn't sure. And just after I signed it, the owner of the building turned to me and said, "Oh yeah, aren't you a yoga teacher?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, could you teach yoga here?" And I thought, "Oh, sure, why not? I'll think about that." And she said, "Well, we could pay you. About 10 people would really like to take the class, and we could pay you." And she named a number, which added up to 3 times the rent that I would be paying. Oh my God. So this is a supported whim. That's what that looks like. You have to take the first step, right? She didn't ask me till I signed the lease. It didn't occur to her. She asked me on a whim. But once I had taken that step, it's that wonderful quote from, I think, from Goethe. When you take that first step, Providence moves too. Or maybe it was the explorer of the South Pole who said that. I'm not sure.
What I'm hearing from you is really you're in touch with how things feel. And in a moment, you started to feel that little bit of resistance, and then the resistance got a little bit bigger. And then you sat with that, and what I'm hearing you say is that there was deciding, there was logic mind happening too, like what happens if I quit, if I don't. And then in that moment that you had been thinking about for a long time it did sort of come as a whim. It came out of your mouth, and then you were finished.
One of the reasons that I knew that I should go, and it was, I would say, not a year, but maybe 6 months before I actually made that commitment to go, was that I wasn't able to do my job as well as I had been, right? And so I was always scrambling to catch up with myself because my online business was beginning to take, number one, it was beginning to make more money than that job was. But also it was taking more time because it was growing and so fast. And so I couldn't really be in integrity with that job. I knew I had to go. So I started talking about leaving. And each time I would say, "I think I should find a replacement for my column," my editor would say, "Are you sure?" And I would, of course, say, "No, I'm not sure. But, I love my job. I had to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to move on."
Oh, you know that I know that, and that's a story for another day. And what I'm curious about is you attending to those feelings. So feeling them, paying attention to them. You made that step, and then the feeling on the other side of that. So the feeling of being at yoga class, and then that absolute knowing.
Yeah.
And going with that. Now, what do you do with, or do you have those moments of kind of tension, where maybe the whim occurs, or it comes to you and you think, oh yeah, that. And then there's often, I think I've heard it from you too, that there's the other part that says, oh, it's not quite ready yet, or no, she asked me a question and maybe I'm not ready. What do you do with that moment of tension, and how do you walk through to the other side of that moment of tension?
Well, it's different each time, of course, but lately, I would say in the last year, I don't have that so much. That doesn't happen so much. I can feel when it's real guidance and when it's some other kind of whim. Whimsy, maybe.
Right.
Something else. I can tell the difference now. But what I used to do is worry. I would worry. I would go back and forth. Do I have the money? Do I have the time? What will people think? How will they feel? Will everyone hate me? I don't really want to leave. I've loved this job. What if I don't get a better one? That's how I would have been thinking about it last year. But I don't feel that way anymore. It's different now.
Now, you mentioned another type of whim, a kind of whimsy, or the other type that might not be true from guidance. How does that one feel to you, or how does it present itself to you?
Well, there's the sort of thing like, oh, I'd love to travel around the world, on a yacht, and this is one of my like favorite fantasies. Live on a boat, and then rent a school bus, and get into that, and buy a school bus, refurbish it, get into that, and drive cross country. Like I have this wanderer, adventurer inside of me that really wants to hit the road all the time. So that feels like more like fantasy, sort of daydreaming, right? But on the other hand, that's a really rich vein of gold for me to mine when I'm looking for what feeds me, what nourishes the so what's the heart of that fantasy? Because there is some truth in that. But maybe I don't want to live in a school bus. So there's some like maybe I want something a little less formal than the Plaza Suite, but then maybe I want to camp out under the stars, or maybe I want to go on retreat. And there are other things that I could do to satisfy that feeling. But traveling is calling to me, and that, like I would say, if I'm fantasizing about that, rather than just relegate it to, oh, that's just me daydreaming, I would sort of scribble that in a journal. This is what I daydreamed, and it felt good, and it felt good for a reason, and then I might query that. And I might say, so what does that daydream know? That's what I might ask.
Amy, I love two things about that. One is the poster over your shoulder of gold. And the other is you had mentioned that maybe this type of whimsy is like a vein of gold, that can be examined and dug through a little bit, because there is another definition of whim that I found, which refers to an item that was used and pulled by a horse to extract ore from the ground, in particular gold ore.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's hitting me right in the absolute truth.
Now I wonder how that became then usage in the language. Now my writer is all lit up with curiosity.
Yeah.
The whim of looking that up after we talked.
Me too. I love it. And I can't encourage you more in the following of your whims. I hear the beauty of you allowing them to come. No one could plan the office that you lease, requiring your yoga skills as well, right? So not only did you jump, and I know that you're human. I know that you would have considered the cost versus, the income and how that would work. And outside of any of those human concerns is that other really grand thing happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to cheer you on, and I would love to talk to you again another time and expand on this, because I could see we could talk for days.
We could.
I know we could.
Well, we already know that we can.
We do know that. With that, thank you, Amy.
And thank you so much.